Alright, this screencast is going to pick up with Teddy Roosevelt's presidency. Teddy Roosevelt is from New York, and he may look familiar to you in the pictures because, as you know, he is portrayed by Robin Williams in Night at the Museum. And he is most noted prior to his presidency, he kind of gained national attention when he became a war hero of the Spanish-American War while serving in the volunteer cavalry. And after gaining national attention, he later on will become the governor of New York and will serve as vice president under William McKinley, who is assassinated just a few short months into his term. So Teddy Roosevelt will serve the majority of McKinley's term as president. Now, Teddy was a very kind of modern and progressive president. He was very bold in his politics. He believed that the federal government was responsible for the welfare of the nation, and that it was the federal government's job to really step up, keep an eye on big business, not let it get out of control, and defend the people. And he will be very successful at this during his career as president. He was known as a trustbuster because he was very successful in enforcing and using the Sherman Antitrust Act to break apart many trusts and corporations. But we'll see that another president in the future will have to pass future legislation, because truly the Sherman Antitrust Act just wasn't that helpful in getting rid of trusts, but Teddy was successful overall. He also was very active in health and food and how it was handled, and kind of putting sanitation restrictions in the food industry. He read the book The Jungle, and he was not very happy with some of the things he read, and so he is first going to have Congress pass the Meat Inspection Act, which kind of put a standard of cleanliness and requirements for cleanliness for all meat packers, and created a program where the federal government would rate and grade meats based on how healthy they were. And we still have a system, not that exact same system, but a similar system in place today where meat is graded A through F. He is also responsible for the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act, which required labels to be put on all food and medications indicating the ingredients in food and medications so people knew exactly what they were consuming. Roosevelt was also kind of concerned with how America viewed our natural resources, and he felt that in many cases Americans kind of took them for granted and just thought they would last forever. So he decided to address this by creating several national parks in which he kind of declared millions of acres of land and water to be kind of protected under the federal government as reserves, meaning you couldn't farm or inhabit these areas, thus kind of saving those trees, saving the wildlife that lived in these areas. So he was kind of considered a conservationist, definitely being a big proponent of nature and being an outdoorsman. Now, Roosevelt will not run for re-election. He kind of wants to take a break. He actually, side note, but ends up going to Africa for some time to hunt wild game. But he's going to kind of handpick his replacement, and that is William Howard Taft. And so William Howard Taft will become our next president. Now, Taft is very cautious and kind of wants everyone to get along and rarely takes sides in any issue. This made it very hard for him to kind of hold together and keep the cohesion within the Republican Party that he was kind of the leader of as president. The Republican Party had begun to split into two factions because you had people who kind of supported the progressive movement within the Republican Party, people who wanted change and sought change, but you also had conservative Republicans who did not seek change. And so, under Taft's weak leadership, the Republican Party is going to kind of split. And it's going to split to the point that basically all the progressives leave the Republican Party and form their own party, the Progressive Party, which, side note, is later nicknamed the Bull Moose Party. And that's not really a side note, I want you to know that, it's on the screen, but the Republican Party would later be nicknamed, not the Republican, I'm sorry, the Progressive Party would later be nicknamed the Bull Moose Party. And Roosevelt, who's actually fairly disappointed in his chosen successor, Taft, is going to come back and actually run for the presidency as a progressive candidate, as the official candidate of the Progressive Party. He's kind of like the party's leader. But, truthfully, because of the split within the Republican Party, this is going to give the other party, the Democratic Party, the advantage, and so their Democratic candidate, Woodrow Wilson, is going to win in the presidential election of 1912. You will not need to know that year, but I just wanted you to kind of know when this is happening. Now, Wilson was a Democrat, but he was a very reform-minded president, much like Roosevelt. And he really wants to use the federal government to provide relief to the people, but also attack big business. He will definitely be successful with antitrust measures. He will actually pass the Clayton Antitrust Act, which sought out to strengthen the Sherman Antitrust Act. And basically, if any company violated this law, the leadership of the company would be held accountable and prosecuted under the law. Woodrow Wilson is also going to be responsible for a new tax system. He is going to encourage free trade by lowering tariffs and kind of getting rid of tariffs for foreign nations, just to kind of encourage free and open trade markets, encourage some natural competition. With that being said, though, one nice thing about the tariffs was it did generate revenue for the United States government, since it was a tax collected by the government. To make up for the loss of the tariff, Wilson is going to be the first president to kind of oversee federal income tax being initiated with the 16th Amendment. So federal income tax comes into existence with the 16th Amendment, which basically places a tax on a person or corporation's earnings over the course of a year. And initially the income tax was very low, but obviously the rates now are much, much higher, and it's somewhat of a source of frustration for many people. Alright, and that's the last of the notes for the screencast. We're going to go over a little bit of the women's suffrage movement in Class Monday, but the majority of Class Monday will be spent on reviewing for the test on Tuesday. So write down any questions you have, rewatch it if you need to, and I will see y'all on Monday.